Welcome to our new listeners from Ohio who may have heard Carol's presentation to the Ohio State Master Gardeners last week. Always room for a few more listeners to chat with over the garden gate.
And welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's less than a third of an acre.
It's not less than a third of an acre. It's about a third of an acre.
Okay, keep going with that intro, girl.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Carol.
Hello, Dee. How is you today?
How is me? I am well, except for I have really bad allergies today, but that's okay. How is your garden?
My garden is good. And Sunday, I ran over to the greenhouse quick just to check in and chat and check a few things. She said she saw frost on the rooftops early Sunday morning, and I didn't even think to look. And yesterday I looked, there was frost on the rooftops, but not in the garden. So it's coming.
It is coming. It's coming here too. Here, it's been still really seasonably beautiful. It's really windy today, which is why my allergies are so bad. But what all have you been doing out there?
You know, I'm doing that hour a day, repeat, hour a day, repeat. And so after last week, when I got the Amsonia out of there, I turned my attention to Vinca minor. And on this,
I hate that stuff.
On the back corner of my house, I have a whole bunch of it. And I decided, you know what? I'm ripping that out. And so I've gotten 2 bags out and I'm probably 2/5 of the way through it. But I just thought you go out and you just pull a little bit every day until it's gone. And then in the spring, of course, a bunch of it's going to come back from the roots. But if I get in there and kind of dig that out, I think in a couple of years, maybe I'd be out of it. So, other thing.
Yeah, that's true of several weeds here. I'd still be pulling them.
So when I was mowing the grass, I found some scat, which is, insect poo. And
no, it's animal poo.
Animal poo. Why did I say insect? I don't know.
Because you were thinking of frass. And
yeah.
Frass is insect poo. But keep going.
Anyway, I've narrowed it down to fox or coyote. And I've seen a fox in my backyard, but it's been years ago. And my backyard has a privacy fence around it. And my neighbors the other day told me that on the middle of a Saturday, they saw a coyote just go right across their backyard. So I don't know. And I thought, if there's coyote in my backyard, I better not just traipse out there. And I would hate to have like a encounter with one. But I don't think there's coyote back there. It's not that big.
If there is a coyote, it'll run away. Coyotes really don't like us very much for good reason. We tend to kill them.
Yeah.
So I have coyotes out here all the time. My dog doesn't like them, so he chases them off.
Anyway, we think there's a road construction where they're turning a state highway into an interstate about 2 miles that away. And so we think maybe the pressure on the wildlife is sort of forcing them away from that construction back towards the houses and stuff. So we'll see. It's kind of exciting. I do scrape it up and bury it because I don't like that scat in the grass.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that.
Because you can't do that at your place because there's too many animals around.
Yeah, I just can't worry about stuff like that. So you want to hear about my garden?
Absolutely. I want to hear about your garden. I always want to hear about your garden.
I took cuttings of a bunch of plants.
Yay.
So I took some cuttings of bluebird aster because I want more of it and more of it. And I kept thinking of Carol Klein as I was taking the cuttings, because when you take a cutting like that on something that's a little bit harder, she always said, get the heel. So when you pull off the stem, you try to get that little piece of stem skin.
Yeah.
And then I roughed it up a little bit, put it in some hormone and rooting hormone. I like that gel rooting hormone. So I'm doing that. I'm also doing.
Well, wait a minute. We should tell our listeners, Carol Klein is one of the hosts, I guess, on Gardener's World on the BBC.
Right. And there's a whole series of her cottage plants about her own cottage garden. And that's where she talked about getting the heel. So I was thinking of her. And so I'm also keeping the pelargoniums watered, keeping those cuttings watered. It's hard right now because it gets really warm during the day and cool at night. So I'm trying to keep the temperature consistent in the greenhouse because we don't heat it yet. It's not time to heat it yet.
Right.
So it's just, I put a fan in there and I opened the door, which helped. And I'm telling that to people who have greenhouses or little side houses, things like that. I also weeded some of the garden, but honestly, I'm just really enjoying the fruits of my labors. I just kind of walk out there and look around, and
good for you.
I have a mole vole problem in the garage border pathway that showed up when we got some rain, and I'll need to fix that path. And everything for fall is planted except for bulbs, of course.
Right.
Hurrah.
Hurrah. And
I'm still taking cuttings.
I did find a dead mouse on the sidewalk.
You probably had a hawk, get it. So,
well, it didn't get it. I had to bury it. I gave it a little burial.
Yeah, it probably dropped it.
Probably. And I'm like, oh, what a day. Scat in the yard, dead mouse on the sidewalk.
I mean, you know what? You just live that suburban life, don't you? I had a bunny in my house the other day.
I know you did.
So
I know you did.
And I saved it, people. I saved the bunny. So
I know you did. All right, let's do this quote. Are you ready?
I am.
To get down and dig in the warm earth, just to smell it, is to feel new strength, and the seeds and bulbs one plants revivify. They're so full of promise of life to come. Watch them grow. They have so much energy and so much imagination that they'll do beautiful things and make themselves beautiful in doing them. Frances Hodgson Burnett.
And for those who don't know, Frances Hodgson Burnett is the author of The Secret Garden, among other things.
Yes. So we'll see a theme to this week's episode, Dee.
Yeah. And our flower this week is garden mums, because we hinted about them last week.
We did.
But last week we really talked about asters and goldenrods. And so this week we're going to talk about garden mums. And when we talk about garden mums, we aren't really talking about the ones that you buy in the store that are turned into a ball shape. Nothing wrong with those.
Nothing wrong with those at all.
But, nothing wrong with those. These are kind of wild, crazy mums.
Right. And you've got a ton. And we want to talk about the wildest, craziest one, the one that's the most popular, and that's Sheffield.
Yeah, Sheffield is very, very, very wild. And I'm looking at it right now. It's finally starting to bloom in my garden. It's taken it a long time this year. I don't know why.
And I have some Sheffield. I didn't realize I had it, but that's the only thing that this one mum could be. But it's just like, it's in a spot that's a little bit too much shade. Yeah. And so if you look at my current blog post, you'll see I put a picture of it. I'm pretty sure it's Sheffield. And I've made a note to move it next spring to a sunnier spot so it can grow a little bit more and spread its wings, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I need to move some of mine too. And that's the thing, is if you get them in an area that over time gets shadier, eventually they will either clamber over to a sunnier spot or they will just kind of go away. And that's what happened to my Will's Wonderful. One day when I went out there, it just wasn't there anymore. So I need to get another start of it. But so we've talked about Sheffield. Will's Wonderful is beautiful. It has dark purple with orangey yellow centers. It's just
that sounds really nice
out there. Yeah, it's beautiful. And then there's Ryan's Pink, which may be an old pass along Clara Curtis or Country Girl. And Ryan's Pink is named after the horticulturist Ryan Gainey. But he found it in a garden. There's also a Ryan's Apricot, and that may be, who knows, that might be Sheffield for all I know. All of them are good mums. And then there's Kathy's Rust, which is rusty.
Never heard of that one.
And I also have one called Emperor of China that is actually a double. I have another one called Matchsticks, which is quilled. But if you want good, if you live in my area or south or even up into Kansas, I don't know about where you live. All of these work. Do they work in your garden or?
Well, I know the Sheffield mum works in the garden, and I would think most of them would work in your garden. Find a pass along from somebody else that's had success growing it. And then ask them if you can have a start, Because if it's growing well, it'll start to spread around and they'll have extra to give away.
Yeah, anybody who lives near me in the spring, don't ask me now because I'm not sharing things right now. But in the springtime, if you think about it, put it on your phone and you can ask me because I will be going through them and pulling a bunch out because these mums do want to take over sometimes and you have to pull them out of certain areas. But they are great mums. And we should just say a little bit about Ryan Gainey. He was a pretty famous horticulturist down in the South. And unfortunately, he died. It might be 2004, but he died in a fire trying to save his dogs.
Yeah, that is a very, very sad story.
That's sad. So I'm glad there's a mom that is named after him because he really influenced a lot of people in the Augusta, Georgia area. He was a mentor to Jinx Farmer, which is Jinx's real name, Augustus Jinx Farmer. And he's just been he was a real influence in his area. So I'm glad something's named after him.
Right. Now I have in my garden what I call the igloo series of mums. And I got a lot of these as trial plants and they are pretty nice because they don't get overly large and they have a little button flower, maybe half the size of some of the bigger mums that you're talking about.
Right.
And they've come back reliably for me. And so I recommend them. They're actually, the genus on them is Dendranthemum instead of chrysanthemum, which is like weird. I think all the chrysanthemums are really dendranthemum. Anyway.
No, actually, that's not. One time I did a big deep dive on that. I did a rabbit hole and certain ones are Dendranthema and certain ones are chrysanthemums. And it has something to do with whether they are like show mums or not show mums or florist mums or something. And I didn't go back and redo it because it was a really big rabbit hole. And really, who cares?
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
So the igloo mums have done really well. And like I said, they sort of kind of just keep to their space and make a nice shape. So here's my story I got about mums.
I want to hear it.
So I noticed over my neighbor's catty corner across the street, they had these beautiful purple mums. These things were at least 2 feet across and just a really nice mounded shape. And they, I saw them over there and I thought, that's not like them to buy big plants like that. And then they were the most beautiful purple and they were in full bloom. And so he was out there kind of digging around and I went over to ask, I says, tell me the story of these mums. And they had gotten them a year ago, like in a hanging basket. And he decided to plant them out and they came back. And I said, did you shear them or do anything? He says, no, they were just that great rounded shape. And so I think that they were an igloo series mum because it looked like the flower.
I bet they were.
So I looked over there yesterday morning. They're gone. He was digging them out. And I thought,
no,
I thought, if I'd known you were digging those out, I would have said, I'll take them. I would have taken at least one and split it up and tried to plant it somewhere because they were beautiful.
Because they looked so good. Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you dig them out now and not like 2 weeks from now?
So that's a really perplexing question for me. Why do people dig out stuff that is working?
He just felt like it was too big by their sidewalk and it was kind of crowded their sidewalk a little bit. And I don't know. And they're getting a new roof today. So if you start hearing pounding here any minute, that's the roof going on.
No, it's them getting their new roof.
Yeah. And I wondered if it's because he knew those guys would be stomping around. But I'm like,
I wouldn't have done it. I would have. Yeah. We had a new roof put on this spring and they stomped all over my gardens and they came back. They were fine. And that's something about mums. They are really brittle. And so when you buy the mum in the perfect shape, which I have 3 in my front flower bed right now that are bright yellow, you have to be careful getting them home because you're liable to squash the one side. And if you do squash the one side, just turn that to the back. No one will ever know.
That's right.
And so in this, let's say 2 things else about 2 more things. 2 things else. What the heck? 2 more things.
Well, they benefit if you have them growing in the ground, they benefit from being cut back in late spring, like we do with asters and goldenrod. That gives them a little bit more branching, and more branching mean more bloom. And so you'll have a nicer, bigger mum in the fall.
That's one of the things. And then the other thing is that you don't turn back your foliage until you see green growing in the spring.
That's right.
I just cut mine back. I I mean, they come up a little bit later than a few things here. So I just cut them back and just don't pull them out of the ground, because sometimes they heave in the winter here
Yes,
because
they
of our
heave
freeze
here all
thaw
the
cycles.
time. They're
Yeah,
fairly
so you
shallow
got to
rooted.
squish them back. Yeah, extremely shallow rooted and benefit from being cut back in the spring and then cut back again. So
the other thing I tell people is if you're going to keep a mum in a container until it's like done and then plant it out in the garden, there's probably a 50-50 chance it's not going to survive. So if you really do want it to survive in the garden, Brad, number one is plant it as soon as you get it in September. Number two is really it's better to buy it in the spring, but nobody sells chrysanthemums in the spring.
There's only a couple of mail order places that sell them in the spring, and you have to do a search. And I would search carefully about mums because some mums, like there's a really good website called King's Mums, but they're almost like, to me, it seems like they're display mums, like what you would do for a show.
Right.
And that's not the kind of mums I grow. I grow mums for texture, light color, pollinators. So I want that open, even though I love double mums, I want that open flower on my mums that stay in my garden all year. And Clara Curtis has that. Will's Wonderful has that. And so does Matchsticks. Yeah. Emperor of China is a double. I probably should pull it out, but it's just so doggone pretty. I don't.
Yeah. The igloo moms, those are not pollinator friendly at all, but the Sheffield is.
But by the time they bloom in your garden, aren't the pollinators about done or not? Or do you have other things for them?
No, I mean, I have pollinators.
On your goldenrod and your asters?
Yeah, the goldenrod's pretty well done.
It is here too.
The asters are done. I'm telling you, that giant hyssop, the Agastaki, that's still.
Oh my gosh, still blooming.
Still has
Everybody
blooms.
should grow Blue Fortune. One of my clients said to me, she saw it in my garden and she goes, "Oh, it's much prettier than in pictures." And I was like, "Oh, that's why you weren't going to plant it, because it wasn't pretty enough." It's very pretty.
Anyway, that's our shtick on mums for fall.
So our next quote: gardeners are by nature a forward-looking lot, forever seeking the perfection that the next season might bring. Marta McDowell in Unearthing the Secret Garden.
And that's a hint about what our book is. But veggies, we're going to, late in fall, it's kind of hard to think about some veggie topics, but we come up with them. And I got one for next week too, but.
Good for you. I'm glad you thought of one.
So we're going to make like true confessions. What vegetable are you just going to stop growing in your garden? And why?
Are you going to go first, or you want me to?
Well, I asked the question, so I think now you have to go first.
Oh, okay. I quit growing garlic last year, and it was a great decision because I don't like to peel garlic and I don't like to grow it. So that's one of my confessions. And I also am thinking about giving up eggplant because I didn't eat any of it this year.
And the skin was tough. I'm going to give up eggplant too, because I planted like 3, 4, 5 seedlings. And
I had 6.
They were very, very healthy plants. They were some of the best looking eggplant I'd ever grown, because I think I grew them from seed and I waited until later to plant them so they weren't bothered by the flea beetles as much. But I just didn't have time to fix any eggplant. And the way I want to eat it is breaded and fried.
Oh, see, I like it in stir fries, but this year it didn't do as well. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it was the heat. Its skin was tougher than usual. And I don't know, just not. Here's the thing. As you age, sometimes foods that you used to like, you don't love as much.
Well,
and sometimes you love other new things.
I love it, but I don't like the big frying mess that it makes in the kitchen. And
who needs that, right?
Who needs that? So I think I will give up growing eggplant, which means I won't start any seedlings, or maybe I'll start 2. I'm already backing off of it, Dee. Okay.
Sometimes you think you're going to let go of something and then you get kind of pulled in.
So I am going to stop growing okra.
Yeah. It takes up a lot of dang room.
A lot of room. And if you don't pick that okra at just the right time, it is a slimy, gooey mess. You really want them early. And again, the way I want to eat it is breaded and fried.
You need to. So it's easier just to buy okra at the CSA one time a year and fry it with abandon and be really happy about it and then let it go. That's my attitude about it.
That's a good attitude. You know what I should buy? I should buy one of those electric skillets like my mom had back in the day. Take it outside and fry up okra and eggplant in abandon outside.
See, now you're talking about growing eggplant again.
And okra.
And okra. Here's the thing. It also attracts a lot of aphids.
Okra does? It didn't in my garden.
In my house, it does. And then the ants run up and down the stems to gather the honeydew off the aphids. And it's just disgusting.
It is.
And I already deal with aphids on milkweed. And I'm not growing okra next year either.
I say I'm not, but now I'm talking about getting an electric skillet so that I could fry outside one time a year. Okay.
That's silly.
I'm just going to grow a little bit. I'm going to.
Oh my goodness.
So that's all I could think to give up in the garden. Everything else. You know what else I'm going to give up?
What?
Swiss chard. I always think that'll be so pretty.
I hate Swiss chard.
I never eat it. And so if I grow it, it's for purely decorative reasons. So
it is so pretty, especially the ruby stemmed Swiss chard. And it's just beautiful in the garden and it grows forever and it grows all summer. So you can have greens all summer. Unfortunately, I think it tastes like caca. So I don't ever eat it either.
Okay. All right.
See, I'm keeping it clean, Carol.
You're keeping it very clean.
So what are you looking forward to growing next summer since we're at the end of?
Well, that's really kind of the topic I wanted to talk about next week, Dee.
Well, good. Then that's a teaser.
That is a teaser. Though I will say that I am going to order microgreen seeds from Botanical Interest this week. Because I enjoyed growing those last year and I felt like it just gives you that little punch, I guess. So I'm going to grow some stuff that's got flavor to it, like
radishes,
cilantro, which a lot of people don't like cilantro, but I like cilantro,
but not everybody does. Yeah.
So I'm going to grow some microgreens.
Okay. But you're not supposed to be talking about that. We're supposed to talk about it next week.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'll do
so
the next
clues
quote.
You should, we got to do the part about clues for reasons you should stop growing something.
Oh, clues.
You came up with these.
Okay. One clue is if you don't eat it, you might want to stop growing it.
Hello, Swiss chard.
The thing is, if it brings in a lot of bugs that you just don't want to deal with anymore.
Yep. That would be okra at my house.
Or maybe it's just something that does not grow well. For example, let me talk about my watermelon experiment.
Oh, man.
So
watermelon.
I grew this bush watermelon, okay?
Right, which was supposed to have smallish watermelons on it, right? And produce more than one.
Right.
How'd that go?
No vine got over a foot long. And I noticed just last week, it had a blossom on it. I'm like, you're way too late, little watermelon plant. There is no way.
Yeah. No.
But, I was over that way. And, this is kind of exciting, Dee.
What's that?
Strawberries. My little strawberry patch is still producing a little bit of strawberries and I enjoyed them.
Yeah, mine produced forever. And I did those red blossomed ones, but it wore out the soil there. So I'm going to replant them in a different spot. I think I need to keep strawberries because of my granddaughter.
Oh, absolutely. Kids love strawberries. All right.
I have lots of pictures holding her. So how about you do the next quote?
I'm going to do the next quote. If you have never had a garden, you cannot understand. And if you have had a garden, you will know that it will take a whole book to describe all that came to pass there. Frances Hodgson Burnett in The Secret Garden. I'm thinking, just one whole book? Frances, you underestimate what goes on in a garden.
Carol's written 7 or something.
Not 7, 5.
Oh,
plus a children's story.
Okay, well, that's 6. I was pretty close. So our book this week is Unearthing the Secret Garden, the Plants and Flowers that Inspired Frances Hodgson Burnett by Marta McDowell, who we know. And as I think we kind of teased this last week,
yes,
that she's written lots and lots of books on history and gardens. She's very interested in that juxtaposition. And Nobody writes like Marta. I love her work.
Marta is one of those authors that's on my buy list. As soon as Marta's got a book, you just buy it. You don't worry about it. It's not going to be
it's going to be really good.
It's
and
fabulous.
I was really excited about this one, as I was about the Beatrix Potter one she wrote. I love both of these books very much. Didn't she write the Emily Dickinson one too?
Yes. And also Laura Ingalls Wilder. I don't have the Laura
I liked them all. I have them all.
Need to get that Laura Ingalls Wilder.
It's good. But, Laura didn't do that many gardens. Laura nearly starved, which is pretty much what that book talks about. But today we're talking about The Secret Garden.
And Frances Hodgson Burnett had several gardens. And this book tells the story of her life kind of through the gardens that she had. This woman was a voracious gardener, I guess I would say. Avid.
I would say voracious. Yeah.
Avid, out there in the early 1900s. She worked her garden. She didn't just let the guys go out there and plant and,
and she also made all of her
plant.
She also made all of her friends come and work in her gardens, which I think is funny.
But it's interesting because she was born in England, and then her father died and they moved to Tennessee. Her mother and she's the middle of 5 children, I think, just like me. But anyway, so they moved to Tennessee, and then she ended up going back to England, and she rented a lovely estate called, I'm pronouncing it Maytham.
I don't know how it's pronounced. I mean, they pronounce words differently sometimes, but we'll say Maytham. It's easy enough.
And she was there for, I think, a good 10 years.
9 years. 9 years.
She didn't make it. She didn't make the fact that it was a rental property, so to speak, keep her from really changing up all the gardens. I mean, this was
she did everything. Yeah, it was really impressive.
Roses all over the place.
Mm-hmm. And The Secret Garden is based upon her rose garden at Maytham.
Yes.
Which I didn't know. That was
either.
really cool.
Then she moved to Long Island, New York, where her son, she had a son who died of tuberculosis when he was 16. But her other son, they had an estate over in Long Island. And then Frances didn't like the cold. So she also had a house that she rented in Bermuda that she would go to in the wintertime. She went everywhere. Before there were jet setters,
she was a jet setter. There just weren't jets yet. I mean, she went on those steamships back and forth all the time.
Yeah.
And she loved Bermuda. And I thought that was just the best of both worlds. In the summertime, she had her garden in New York. And then in the wintertime, she went to Bermuda and stayed. And she did this until she got really sick.
Yeah. And the only 2 gardens that survive, the Bermuda garden is still there, though not really a curated garden that they say, oh, this is where Frances gardened. And Maytham in Great Britain is still there because British gardens last forever, right?
Some of them do. And they were smart enough to realize that she used it for the secret garden. And now they've kind of used that as a selling point when they do open garden days, which is brilliant.
The Long Island house and garden, that's gone. It went up in flames. The house went up in flames.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you do have a new appreciation for the author, Frances Hodgson Burnett, for the way the Secret Garden was written, for her passion for gardening. That little story, Marta included
that story.
2 extra things in the book, a story about a robin that Frances Hodgson Burnett wrote. And then the first of, I call it a long article, the first of like 6 that she wrote pretty close to her death that she had hoped to get published in a garden book. And her son got it published after her death.
Right. And the first article is about a ha-ha, which is an English thing. And you guys will have to read the book to learn what a ha-ha is.
Yeah.
And I've seen a ha-ha. Did you know that?
Ha-ha. I did not know that.
I was at a garden in Yorkshire and it had a ha-ha. And until then, I didn't know what one was.
I keep having to remember one was. My yard's not big enough to have a ha-ha.
But I had to laugh because in the article, she talks about a ha-ha it prevented cattle coming into your actual landscape. But she also said it prevented deer. And I thought, no, that probably isn't true. I don't know. I mean, maybe deer won't cross it. I don't know.
Anyway, the book, Unearthing the Secret Garden, The Plants and Flowers That Inspired Frances Hodgson Burnett by Marta McDowell is on the buy list Nobody's getting our copies. We bought them. We keeping them.
Yeah, we didn't even ask for them from Timber Press. We could have, but we wanted to support Marta, and so we bought the books right when they came out.
Yeah, and
also, if you guys click on an affiliate link on our show notes, it helps support the podcast. So if you decide to buy this, click on it.
That's right. And I told the little bookstore, I was there last week. I said, you guys have to get this book in stock. And then I was on a writing group last night, non-gardeners. I said, you all still have to buy this book because I all knew about The Secret Garden. I said, now you have to buy this book. So
yeah, most children have read it. So it's actually brilliant marketing, in my opinion. So there you go. Do I do the next quote?
Indeed, you do.
As long as one has a garden, one has a future. And as long as you have one.
Francis's quotes are a little bit of a tongue twister.
I cannot read this quote. I'm going to try one more time. As long as one has a garden, one has a future. And as long as one has a future, one is alive. That's ridiculous, but whatever. Frances Hodgson said this in her essay that was published right after her death.
And you know what? I think I screwed up putting it in our show notes.
Well, I feel a lot better now because I was like, that's not even
it should be
correct.
As long as one has a garden, one has a future. And as long as one has a future, one is alive.
There you go. Okay. So we should take out the other you. Got it. All right. So our dirt this week is actually from me. Do you want me to talk about it?
I do. I really enjoyed this little episode.
Aren't you glad I sent this to you?
Yes. Except it made me hungry.
It did make me hungry too. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I've been watching CBS Saturday mornings because the truth is about the news and me, I really only care about the human interest stories.
Exactly.
I could care less about the rest of it. So this one was about, his name is Simon Rogan, and he has an amazing restaurant called Le Clume, and L'Enclume, I think. And so this amazing restaurant has a tasting menu, and it's really hard to get into, and it was amazing. And so he started, what does it have to do with gardening? He started his own garden to get the produce he wanted to put in his tasting menu, which like every little tasting thing looked like an amuse-bouche. It was the most amazing. And I remember what the name of the restaurant means. In French, in English, it means the anvil. And so I just thought it was the coolest little segment. So you guys should all click on this and go look at it because it is really good. He makes tiny little gardens on his food.
Oh, the food just looked amazing because they would take just the tiniest little like florets. I'm trying to think what flower, but they would just take these little florets and use them to decorate on top of something that had like little, like pickled gooseberries or something. And it was just like,
oh my goodness.
And it just enough for a taste. And I thought, I just feel like a big clod sometimes. I just slop the food on the plate and eat it. And it's like art.
It is art. So he had fresh vegetables and greens, and he wanted a decent radish because one of the things he loves to make has shaved radishes across the top of it.
Oh my God, that looks so good.
That looked so good. And he couldn't get a decent radish. So they decided to just grow them in their own gardens, and you get to see his garden and you get to see the food. And it's just a little bit of peace in your day.
Exactly. And you think, oh, I'll just grow a few radishes. And then you see these amazing, amazing gardens full of greens and everything.
Oh my gosh, so pretty.
And Dee, you remember when we went to Chicago with garden bloggers? We went to that one chef. He had a garden behind his house where he grew greens for his garden. I cannot remember the chef. It's a Mexican restaurant. I cannot remember the chef's name.
I'll tell you in just a second. He's from Oklahoma.
But anyway.
It's that famous chef from Oklahoma who is Rick Bayless. It was Rick Bayless's garden. And I have used, even to this day, I've used some of his pictures from his garden in some of my talks because it really was beautiful. And then there was another time, I think you were with me on this trip. We were in Buffalo, and our friend Elizabeth Licata took us to a French restaurant, and they had a garden in the backyard.
They did.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Which in Buffalo is impressive, as it is in Chicago too.
Anyway, and the gardens were so neatly tended. I thought, I got to up my game. I got to up my food game. I got to up my gardening game. Anyway, I will do this next quote. We have lots of quotes today. I want to encourage you to choose wisely. Choose kind words over angry ones. Plant goodness. Water what matters most instead of the weeds. And tend consistently to your garden and life so they will grow into something that can inspire and uplift generations to come. And that is by Carrie Wilt. She is the great-great-granddaughter of Frances Hodgson Burnett. And she wrote that in the afterword of Marta's book, Unearthing the Secret Garden. So we'll put a link to her website. That
is beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm. And she's a very wise woman.
We met Carrie at the GardenCom meeting in Chicago. That was her first one, I think. Lovely, lovely person.
So Marta is lovely. Carrie is lovely. You guys, that book is worth reading, and you guys should go watch that little video. It's worth every minute of your day.
Exactly.
It'll make you happy. So rabbit holes.
Go down
that takes us to a rabbit hole.
Go down.
I want to hear about your fig chutney.
So I went down a rabbit hole looking at recipes for figs because I finally feel like I had enough figs that I couldn't just like eat a few fresh figs and then throw the rest away. Mm-mm. So I found a recipe for fig chutney, and I didn't know. I kind of knew what chutney was.
I love fig chutney.
So I don't know if you love this one or not, but there's chutneys, which I thought were British, but they're Indian. And then there's English style chutney, which I think I did with the figs, not to be confused with jams and jellies.
Okay. But there's never been a chutney I didn't like. So I think I would like yours.
So this fig chutney, it obviously had figs. It had apples. That's what provides the pectin, I think. Onion, raisins, and then the spices were, it also had sugar and apple cider vinegar.
Cinnamon, right?
It did not have cinnamon. It had nutmeg, clove, and ginger.
Well, that sounds delicious.
It is, but I really think if I make it again, that I'll skip nutmeg, clove, and ginger and just pour cinnamon in because I do love cinnamon.
Okay. Why don't you try cinnamon and nutmeg? Because nutmeg is pretty minor, but ginger is pretty,
but it's assertive. Good. I thought, well, I need fancy cheeses and crackers and things to eat my chutney with. But instead, I just had a toasted piece of sourdough, and that's what I ate my chutney on. I
think it'd be really good with cheddar cheese.
I think it would be good with cheddar cheese. I need to get some cheddar cheese.
You know what else is good with cheddar cheese?
What?
My rabbit hole, which is all about apples. And this time of year, I really want an apple pie, but I try really hard not to eat much sugar. And so I eat a lot of snacking apples, and I like tart ones and sweet ones. And have you had an envy apple yet?
I have not, but now I want to try one.
So they sell them almost everywhere because they've planted a lot of trees of envy. And envy is a more modern apple like Cosmic Crisp. I don't really like Cosmic Crisp. It's too sweet. Envy has a nice tart sweet balance, and it's extremely crunchy, which I like in my snacking apples.
Yes.
And then my other favorite apple that I love is Pink Lady, which is, I also think, is a more modern apple. I really love wine sap, but wine sap apples are extremely hard to find. And you can use Pink Ladies like you would Granny Smith, but you can also eat them with cheddar cheese.
Yeah. Now I like my apple to be a little on the sweet side. I don't like.
Then you'd like envy. You'd probably like envy.
And I would like to hear from our listeners if they want to leave us
favorite.
A comment or an email and say, tell us your favorite, because I love apples, but they got to be on the sweet side for me.
So I would love to hear too. And if you guys like Cosmic Crisp, tell me why, because I think it's really boring.
Yeah. Nobody wants a boring apple. And when we go on those GardenCom tours and they give you that sack lunch, it's always got that apple in there. And does anybody eat those apples? Because they are the most boring, horrible things.
They're terrible apples, and they're usually green, because whoever is the person who's...
They're just like red Macintosh, and it's like, there are a lot of better apples than this.
There are better apples. I mean, you can cook with Macintosh and it's delicious, but, let's talk about better apples.
Yeah, better apples. Anyway, that is it for this week's episode. Oh, no, we have to do our garden commissions.
I got ahead of myself.
So tell us what you're going to be doing in the garden, Dee.
I'm still going to be taking cuttings, and I'm going to do that these last few days because I'm still cutting back. I'm still taking cuttings from all of my coleus, and I'm feeding the bees 2-to-1 sugar syrup because that's the closest thing you can feed them to honey. And I heard a whole controversy about people don't think you should feed honeybees in the fall. I read that on one of my honeybee people. Well, here's the thing. You sometimes have to, because sometimes you'll have somebody who's not doing so well. And I have somebody who's not doing so well. So those girls need some food. And then I'm walking in the park because right now the park is beautiful because it's a prairie park. I'm thinking of Mitch Park. Love being out there. Oh, wait, that's not gardening. Okay.
Anyway, it is getting cooler here. And so I'm still getting that hour a day in the garden. And I have lots of vinca to pull out and the usual mowing and weeding. Plus, I think I'll probably finish garden cleanup. The only thing left are tomatoes, peppers, and the prettiest nasturtiums I have ever grown, Dee. These are amazing.
They are pretty. You sent me a picture of them and they are beautiful.
Beautiful.
Maybe I'll post that on our Instagram. I didn't think about that, but I could.
I'll send you a new picture.
Yeah, send me a new picture, a really pretty one. And also, I am cleaning up the vegetable garden too. And I need to cut back one last lavender. I need to use my hedge trimmers and trim one last lavender because you want your lavender to go into winter soft. If it goes into winter hard stems, it will not make it.
Very good advice. I need to trim back my lavenders. They're huge.
Trim them back.
Anyway, we'd like to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelus. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites. And use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through them, it costs you nothing, and we earn a small commission.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.